Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to CAMFest Online and a first look at You Are Here. I'm Stephen Gong, and it's my great pleasure to be moderating this conversation with some of the creatives behind this important project. Before we get started, I'd like to thank you all for joining us, and I'd like to acknowledge and thank our community co-presenters for helping us get the word out about today's program. They are the Chinatown Community Development Center, the Chinese Cultural Center of San Francisco, the Donaldina Cameron House, and the Hong Kong Association of Northern California. Before I introduce our guests, I'd like to invite you to share a question or a comment using the button at the bottom of your screen. Our guests, first I'd like to introduce Dorothy Quock. She's a researcher and field producer for Good Medicine Picture Company. She was born and lives in San Francisco Chinatown. Her interest in culture and history has fueled a lifetime of multicultural study and world travel. With a degree and certification in travel and tourism, Dorothy has led many groups to the People's Republic of China and to many other corners of the globe. She is currently a tour leader with San Francisco's Walk Whiz Chinatown Tours, and she will also be profiled in You Are Here. Our second guest is Anna Oh, co-director and editor of the Penny Wong Ms. Chinatown segment we just watched. Anna met James while screening her own short film, Harmony, at the Boston Asian American Film Festival in 2016. She also screened her other shorts previously at CAMFest and is a local resident of San Francisco. Our third guest and final guest is James Q. Chan, an Emmy-nominated filmmaker, also based in San Francisco. He's well known to CAMFest audiences, having produced Harry and Josh Chuck's Chinatown Rising, which was CAMFest opening night last year. It seems like a decade ago, it's in some ways. James's other recent credits include Bloodline, which he, a food series, which he made with Chef Tu David Fu and Santosh Daniel, and of course, Forever Chinatown, which was broadcast nationally on PBS in 2016. The film received multiple jury and audience festival awards, and James received a certificate of honor from the city of San Francisco for his work in amplifying stories from the APA community, immigrant voices, and tenant rights. And with those introduction, I want to start by asking each of you how you're doing right now in this moment, broadcasting live, but each of us in our own homes. Let's start with you, Anna.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Currently at home with my parents and my sister in San Jose. So it's been kind of a different experience rejoining my family. Kind of feels like high school all over again, honestly.
Absolutely. Thank you. Dorothy, how are you doing? Where are you at?
I'm doing okay. I'm in my 480 square foot apartment. 64 days as of today without leaving the building except once. But thanks to friends and tenant neighbors, groceries are brought to me, so I'm existing well.
That is so wonderful, and it's important that you stay safe. And I happen to know that, James, you are one of the wonderful people helping her out and helping many other folks out in Chinatown. How are you? And tell us what fills your days these days.
Oh man, thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Cam, for having us. It's an honor and a pleasure. And well, let's see, how am I? I am doing well on this 98th day of April in the coronavirus. Just got back from volunteering with the great Chinatown CDC and hanging out with Roy and Erica. And it's been amazing just to be a part of the community during this time. It's part of it. It's also like, you know, I'm an 80s latchkey kid. So I've been used to being left alone and watching movies all day long. So it's familiar territory.
Thank you very much. You know, my first question, and I'm sure on the minds of a lot of the viewers, and congratulations. What a beautiful trailer, and Anna, what a beautiful segment. And we'll talk about both. But, you know, generally I might ask you, what is the inspiration for this film? But James, knowing you, knowing your background and the stories that you choose, we don't have a question about the inspiration. It's a deep love of community that you've got. But, you know, for folks who don't know you well, maybe you can tell us a little bit about why Chinatown is so special and why San Francisco Chinatown is special to you.
Yeah, San Francisco, thank you. San Francisco Chinatown, it has major property in my heart, mainly because of the community that supported my father when we moved here from the Midwest. And for the first time, he was able to have community around him. And Portsmouth Square was one of those special places. And so I would catch the cable car to middle school, Francisco Middle School. So I would traverse the neighborhood during middle school times. But it was also in high school going to Cameron House. And that's where I was able to, you know, hang out and meet some special people that are still in my life today. Harry Chuck, Josh Chuck, and I was in Harry's older son, Tim's group. So Chinatown, like I said, it has a major piece of property in my heart. And now working on this project with Miss Dorothy and Anna, we all live around the area at the neighborhood, so it's been a joy.
Thank you. Which takes us to this particular series. So if you don't mind, you know, a couple of different questions you might try to answer together, like who's the intended audience, you know, and it seems to me, for one thing, we know we're fellow travelers, right? And people who love this community so much. To what extent, you know, is it a record for this community of a picture of itself? To what extent, really, are you trying to introduce, right, a more general audience to some aspects of Chinatown they may never have thought of, even if they visited or walked the streets?
Yeah, this is first and foremost a project for our community. It's a neighbor's story. It's a Chinatown stories. It's getting to know the neighbors around us. It's made by us, for us, first and foremost. And I wanted to, this You Are Here series is very much an online repository. And for me, it's an online digital archive that will continue to grow. Multiple stories. And I don't want to tell these stories on my own, and it's impossible for me to do so. So I've called on some great folks to join me, like Anna. But it all started with the catalyst of this was the end of Forever Chinatown. We see and get introduced to certain portraits from the community, and mainly these portraits were to serve that there's multiple entry points into San Francisco Chinatown, and through many different storied lives. And so when Dorothy and I began hanging out, we take Tai Chi lessons together twice a week, pre-pandemic, of course. And I would walk down to Dorothy's house, pick her up, and we would walk down to our Simu, who is one of the only female master Tai Chi and Shaolin, has a studio in Chinatown. She's one of the only few female masters. And so Dorothy and I started talking about how many more fabulous human beings there are in Chinatown. And so from there, we just created like a whole list. She had a whole checklist of people to visit. And so from there, it just kind of went from one person to another person. But I'd love to hear Dorothy.
Yeah, Dorothy, tell us about, in a sense, was the research its own process, or is this a lifetime of research in a sense that you've been doing and knowing and understanding amazing people in the community?
Well, been doing my tour guiding for over 3 decades, and specifically Chinatown, that I began to accumulate all this information about people and places in the community. Most of it is in my head. Finally, I had to start putting it down on paper and cards. But I'm so glad that James came along and asked for this kind of research that I didn't know what to do with. And when I'm gone, I was afraid that no one else will really pick up these stories and these people who are part of the pillars of Chinatown and should not be lost. So it's for my...
I'm sorry, Dorothy, if I've cut out. Just hold on a second. We might have a bit of a technical problem. But we've gotten the gist of what you were saying, these remarkable people. It is wonderful that James is here with this project to bring us deeper. And that brings me, at least for this moment, to turn to Penny Wong, the subject, Anna, of the segment that you are directing and editing right now. We just saw an excerpt from it, right? Tell us how that particular segment came about and for you, and how did you develop the kind of profile that you wanted to create for this segment?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Well, as we kind of heard, you know, James and I go way back, and we were filmmakers together, and it was just an amazing opportunity to collaborate on such intimate pieces. And I actually joined at the kind of end of filming and things like that. But even throughout the post-production, I was able to meet Penny and hear her stories directly, and even visit her at her house. She's just a wonderful character and has just so much life in her. And even just spending time with her briefly, you can really hear just her experiences. And that's kind of what we wanted to share and try to focus on specifically her transitions in life. Something that wasn't highlighted in the piece that we showed is her background and history, living in Chinatown and having grown up in Chinatown from the Gunn Moon facility. And she was part of this whole history that exists in Chinatown. So in the film, we really want to highlight her experiences with this kind of definition of home. And how home is for her so many different things. And in that process, she kind of like changes her environment from her home in Chinatown, where she's lived for 40 plus years, to then going into, you know, her senior home in San Francisco as well. So that's kind of the focus of this piece, and we were able to see a little bit of it. But she's just a remarkable character, and that's what we hope to bring out in this project.
Right. And for those viewers who aren't familiar with Gunn Moon, you could look it up. It is a remarkable home and living facility for women at risk, and has a rich history. And it's somewhat of the similar to the history of the Donaldina Cameron house itself. And so these are really important institutions in Chinatown. And you know, one of the things that reminds us there in the trailer, we saw so many glimpses of senior citizens doing rich and amazing things, right? Teaching Tai Chi and dancing in the streets. And we know that's the Grant Avenue Follies. And I think it's an aspect also for those who, it's a wonderful, as you said, James, kind of way to memorialize and make sure that we think about the wonderful community and the seniors in our community. But for folks not in Chinatown, I think it's rich, and it demonstrates and it shows the kind of care and love across generations that is part of the Chinese culture in particular. So I'm sure many folks, particularly now that we're in this kind of COVID pandemic, are wondering and perhaps even worrying about Penny's health and safety. And I'm wondering, James, can you tell us if she's all right now and just how things are going for her?
Yeah, I last touched base with Penny about a week ago, and she's doing well. Her spirits are up. I've been in contact with her wonderful daughter Janice as well, and Janice has been keeping me posted as well. It's hard. It's hard with the community in senior homes right now, as we have seen in the headlines, where the devastation in across the nation. Thankfully, she is safe. Rosemary, who you met in the clip as well, her friend who she met up with and gave her a quick tour of the facilities. She's doing well also. But it's hard. They're not seeing each other. They're not seeing families. This time is devastating. I joke about myself being able to flourish because of being a latchkey kid, but there's huge suffering across the nation, especially with Penny and her daughter not being able to see her during this time.
Understood. Thank you. So we have I'm sorry, go ahead, James.
I was walking by with Roy. One of the trailers is Jones Wong of Wong's TV radio repair, and he was there today in the storefront. It's businesses like, you know, there's some businesses that are open in phase 2, and he was there behind his gated door, and he said he said hello. But he's a wonderful man. He looks healthy. But again, I missed seeing during this whole last 2 months, seeing the vibrancy of these community members. But it was a joy to see him today.
Getting your rice cooker repaired is an essential service. Yes. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Yes, it is true. I love that story. I love him, love him, love him.
And my Radio Shack radio, he helped me repair that, plus many other electronic gadgets. So Jones Wong is one of the people in the community that has contributed over 50 years as a shop owner of a hardware store that has things that you will always find something there that you could use in the appliances.
It is truly like a living museum. And one thing about Jones's story that I absolutely love is when we asked him the question of, you know, the changes in technology, like, does he still repair radios? Does he still repair TVs? And he's like, no, I repair rice cookers for the community. It was this aha moment. But then on top of that, it's a theme about how the inevitableness of change, how things change. This is a legacy business that is, it's going to shift because his children are American born and raised working in different fields. They are not going to take over a radio or TV repair shop. So you look at the changes that are coming into a community like beloved Chinatown. Yes, there's gentrification that's coming in, that's swooping in, and that is absolutely horrific. But then there are businesses that are inevitably, change is gonna come like this. That with Mao Li, the sausage factory, love that story as well,
So let me ask you, James, I've got a number of questions coming in,
yes.
And I think I'll try to distill them together. And that is, how many portraits did you envision for the series, at least now? And a kind of follow-up, I could wait for your answer, is because of the COVID pandemic, in a sense, is it caused you to maybe rethink the direction, you know, of the series, and in some ways try to account for this experience currently that we're going through? But anyway, let's start at the beginning. What was your original conception of how many stories you thought you wanted to create, or was it open-ended always?
I think it was, Dorothy, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we set up for the number 8 because that's an auspicious number for us.
Yes.
So 8 per season, and we grow from that. And so in terms of what the makeup would look like is we release 8 episodes, and that's the thing where we didn't want to, I love grant writing. I absolutely nerd out and geek out on writing grants because it allows me to take the movie in my mind and put it on paper and then share it. But I didn't want to write a grant for this, mainly because I didn't want to wait around for the timeline of disbursement of grants. So luckily with some resources, I was able to self-fund this, and Dorothy and I have been able to just do this on our own through trial and error. And got enough footage to carry us through season 1. And so I think we have 5 episodes, Dorothy?
8, I thought.
8, but then 5 that's
Oh, that's going to be shown by fall.
Yeah, in the fall, because we
Yes.
ran out of time and I had to go out of the country for other work. So what this pandemic has given us and confirmed for us is that this is a perfect time. I to be online to watch stories about the beautiful humans that live down the block in San Francisco Chinatown, and also a time where it is scary, where it's like it's no joke. Like our elders are, they're facing their sunset years, and their stories are going to be, forgotten. And so this project pulls focus on those to basically have a platform where we can preserve those memories and those stories.
Go ahead, Dorothy.
I hope it will go on indefinitely, because there are dozens and dozens of people in the community that could be highlighted and is part of the history of Chinatown. And so my grandson will be able to find out this era that not only I am living through, but in succeeding decades. So it's marvelous that James has come up with this You Are Here, where it can be perpetual. Thank
Absolutely.
you for the 7th career.
Absolutely. And so, James, that sounds like you do have some plans to premiere the series in the fall. And I'm sure a lot of the viewers would like to know how they can, catch more of these stories. So do you have that worked out yet, or is it one of these stay tuned?
We've been incubating this project for quite some time, so it feels right that it all is accessible online. So it'll be an online series similar to The Humans of New York, similar to The Great Big Stories, but it's solely focused on our stories in San Francisco's Chinatown. But then there are also stories like Leon Sons, who is a phenomenal person and artist who lives outside of Chinatown, but we want to include his story as well because it intersects and there's a common thread to San Francisco Chinatown. So on the website Good Medicine Films, there's a You Are Here series information, and it lays out what we are trying to do. And what we are trying to do next is that we have the groundwork for season 1 in place. And we are now calling on the artists, the web developers. We're calling on the youth who are watching this, or the family members that know of a young person who loves documentary filming and wants to get involved. And we want to take that young person, we want to pair them up with a seasoned filmmaker. And I've made some calls already and lined them up. And so I'd love to work with Anson and Josh and Harry again, but also call on the seasoned filmmakers like Leo and Felicia. So it's an all hands on deck. We want to curate these specific stories that Dorothy has, of all these people, and we want to curate and match the folks together. And then it'll be a continuation of that. So from one generation to like, you know, one season to the next season. So we build on it. So on the website, Good Medicine Films, the You Are Here series, there's a form that folks can submit their stories as well as if they're interested. And then there's also a donation tab too. I know that during this time it's hard right now to ask for money for this project, mainly because food justice is a main of utmost importance right now. So if those who have the means to support this project to keep it going, there's also ways of donating. There's a fiscal sponsor that we have, but in the long-term run, I'd love to see this as this project as a cultural entity unto itself, with a board of advisors and made up of community members, so that it kind of keeps going. So in a way, a digital catalog archiving our stories. I need help.
Well, stay in touch, Cam. We're here to try to help you if we can. And, you know, I know a lot of folks watching. There are a lot of folks in Chinatown who are very much concerned about its preservation and its sustainability. And I think you're going to find a lot of support. And I did also actually want to do a shout out. I don't know if you all are aware, there's in some ways a similar effort going on in New York Chinatown called Think Chinatown. And
Alicia just sent me an email, yes.
Yeah, it's preservation through storytelling, and it's really wonderful. So maybe we can do this as kind of a national movement. So we thank you for having the vision, you know, having the spirit, both the technical understanding of how important media could be to preserve these vital stories about Chinatown. It seems to me it's the perfect use of media, James, and you are the perfect person to be able to do it. So
and you guys, Cam and Dorothy and Anna, yes, join, come on aboard.
It's the work we all do together. That's right.
Yes.
So let me try to bring some other folks in. You know, I've got a lot of people saying, with everything happening, this is from Robert, with everything that's happening in the world, has the release of this caring documentary looking into the Chinese American lives in San Francisco's Chinatown been aligned to come out during a time of racism towards the same communities and hopefully bring out compassion and cancel hate? It's hard to make something respond to something that kind of powerful, but what are your own thoughts about some of the ugliness that's been unleashed at this time?
Dorothy, do you want to?
Yeah, personally, I have not had to deal with that at the current racism that's happening, but I certainly have felt it through my life. That's why being a citizen ambassador, I call myself, as a tour guide, being able to offer information and history and relate it to the people who come and want to find out more about Chinatown, and some who just happen to just have a fun couple of hours in another culture. I think this is one of the ways in which racism can be coped with, by having information and having relationship with different people.
Oh, sorry, Dorothy, you cut off.
Sorry, Dorothy, you cut off a little. So we'll come back.
Oh.
A peaceful world.
Oh, good. I'm sorry, I think we've got you. Would you mind repeating just the last?
I just got a PayPal notice that somebody's donating. That's really cool. Thank you.
That's the way we'll do it.
I know, it's amazing.
I was just saying that through my work of being a tour guide has to be a person that can open up information and be a citizen ambassador in the sense of relating what the Chinese culture is all about, and also to find out about the people who come on the tour. I've had people from all over the world, and to understand about them and their culture. So it's a mutual exchange and understanding, and that's what comes about to eventually have peace, I think.
Thank you, Dorothy. Yes, understanding, meeting people, understanding them allows them to understand you better, and absolutely it increases empathy and compassion, which we can never have enough of. And I am remiss, and I wanted to ask Ellen, I wanted to ask you, or Anna, I'm sorry. Anna, I wanted to ask you, you're not ethnically Chinese. What brings you to these stories, and sort of, what kind of commonalities do you see in the larger Asian American diaspora, or being a diaspora community member here in America? Are there things that really resonate with you as you started to direct this in this series?
Yeah, I think if I understood the question right from the audience, I just think that, as the filmmakers, as people with the tools and the ability to share these stories, even especially in this online post, in this COVID season, I think it's our duty as filmmakers to be able to share these perspectives and invite others to recognize these experiences are real. And for me personally, yeah, I think that having joined James in his effort to share these voices, for me, it just reminds me of my grandfather in Korea. I lost all my grandparents except for my grandpa, and not being able to be with him physically during this time is definitely, it's devastating. And in all ways, we are all human, and we're connected, and we're able to experience those emotions together. So I feel like it is a shared thread, and yeah, more importantly, it's our duty, I think, to be supporting our communities and just encouraging each other during this time.
Thank you very much for that.
For those who haven't seen Anna's beautiful film called Halimony, it is about undocumented youth activist Ju Hong, and returning, finally getting to a place where he reunites with his grandmother. And I saw this at Boston Asian Film Festival. Yay, Boston. I was at the edge of my seat, and I was pretty much crying in this person's hair in front of me. It was so moving. So Anna, I've long been wanting to work with Anna. So
likewise.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
And that's the same young man that's featured in that film that was here in San Francisco, just a couple blocks from where we are living, in which President Barack Obama was giving a talk. And this young man was the one who spoke up to ask, what is he doing about it in terms of immigration and having difficulty to get settled.
You just,
I know.
We lost you again, Dorothy.
We lost you again, Dorothy. Sorry.
Okay.
She's so magnetic that we could just try to read her lips.
Is it
Love
glitch
you, Dorothy.
again?
There was a glitch.
Yeah, we lost a little bit of that at the end, but we know it was a nice anecdote about a young man, that president.
That's in the film that Anna
Yes.
I see.
presented.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to point out that the film is quite relevant, because still we're having to face undocumented immigrants, and the issue is still at hand. And so I think, Anna, your film was timely to talk about, you know, immigration and to talk about this touching scene of the grandson finally getting to meet his grandmother in Korea.
Oh,
Yeah.
we'll have to post information about that film so people can catch up on it. You know, we're coming to toward the end of our conversation, and there's one aspect that occurred to me. You know, it is so striking, and we saw in the trailer, and so many of the stories are really about, you know, your citizens in Chinatown now whose life's work has not yet been recognized. Actually, there are so many others that I know a little bit about. That one shop that sells the homemade sausage still, you know, 5 generations. I mean, that's a pretty amazing story. But James, I wanted to dip back in also something that a number of viewers may not know is that you apprenticed, as it were, or you were brought into the film world by working with a couple of very well-known San Francisco filmmakers, Rob Epstein and Jeffrey Friedman. Yeah, and I can't help but think that you are now passing along, you know, this responsibility and this weight to develop young filmmakers. And one of the questions we have from Zulima asks, what words of wisdom would you offer for young creators? And this is something I'd like to start with you, James, but have all 3 of you touch on.
Yeah, I think this goes across the board in any industry, but since I'm in film, it is first one to the front reaches back, always.
That's lovely. And Dorothy, for you, it's clear that you've in your life have wanted to make connections, right, with young people and help them sort of understand their potential and their worldview in stronger ways. Where does that come from in you as a value?
I think it's because people have helped me as a 10-year-old who saw apparently some potential in a family of 8 children where I did not get the attention and the care that I needed to thrive. And kindergarten teacher, other elders who surrounded me with love and care through my teen years and young adult years. So I want to have this perpetuate that those of us who are elders now, I'm 86, and I want to offer that same kind of concern and care.
Thank you very much. And Anna, please tell us about, you're still a young filmmaker moving out, but you're kind of in between this here, but you had such touching words about your grandfather, and I want to get a sense from you what it's like to, you know, work in a team and what you will be looking forward to sharpening your own experience and skills and then bringing the next generation along.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just, you know, you got to meet you got to meet a lot of people. And I think also just making friends with other filmmakers and being collaborative with them, encouraging collaboration, I think is what I would like to propose, because this was like a project that I've been looking forward to, even though I didn't know even before. I just knew that I would want to work with James, and it's such an amazing opportunity. And I think if you have the people around you to collaborate and meet other filmmakers like yourself in this community, please do so and make work together.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for those encouraging words. I think we're gonna, I wanted to give you one more kind of quote from Katie Kwan, a good friend of ours and yours.
Katie!
She says, thank you all for sharing these magical moments. Hi, Ms. Dorothy and James, long time no see. Hi, Anna, loved your film, How Many? I share it in my courses and the students cheer and cry all at once. Love the clip. I look forward to seeing the rest of your film. So you've already made a fan who teaches
Much
film.
love, Katie. I'm a big fan of hers.
So we're going to close our session. Thank you so much for sharing this first look with all of us. And for everyone in the audience, be sure and tune in to look up the Good Medicine Film Picture Company. What's
Thank
the
you, Eugenia
company?
Bay from Boston, being the first one to donate. Thank you.
Great. So we look forward to it. And, certainly at CAAM, we're going to blast out. And as soon as we get the word, we're going to help promote all of this. And love to see you and your next projects right around the bend. Take care.
Much love. Much love.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Take care, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.